Hey everyone. So I'm kind of excited for today. We're going to do a lesson on just specifically on layering. Now this is a painting that I filmed in a prior lesson. I believe it was last month. So if you just scroll down through the last few months, you should be able to find this painting. I'll try to post the title of that lesson in the description for this video. So this is, you can think of this as essentially part 2 of that lesson, but really the focus of this lesson is just going to be layering. We haven't done a lot of this lately. I've definitely gone over layering in some of the early videos, but I don't think I've done just a lesson that deals with layering alone. And some of the paints I like to use for layering and techniques and whatnot. All right, so first step with layering, I used to use Neoma Gilt from Gamblin, but I'm back to using Liquin. So we're just going to squeeze out some Liquin on our palette. Oh, and I need a new jar. Of course, you can't start a video off without something going wrong. So while I'm opening this, we'll talk about these two mangled tubes of paint that I have in the palette shot over here. So this one over here is Indian Yellow from Gamblin, or I'm sorry, Williamsburg. A very, very expensive brand of paint. I don't particularly recommend unless you have the money. It's this specific Indian Yellow though is so beautiful in transparent glazes, like a watercolor pigment almost. So I love using this, and this is transparent orange from Gamblin. This is very inexpensive. Diary Lid, I think, or yellow. Diary Lid, I don't know how you pronounce it, yellow. And this is Indian Yellow. And I have a cobalt yellow over there that I've used in the past, and for any of this, you could use transparent red oxide, transparent orange, transparent red, alizarin, Prussian blue. All of the transparent pigments is what we're going to start with today. Now, I've gone over glazing quite a bit on this channel, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much on that. I'm just going to show the process that I use when I'm layering. For those of you who are a little bit more advanced, I need to shake up this new bottle. It should come out thick like that, right? All right. Grab some on the paper towel, and I'm just gonna spread it around, not too thickly. So that whole amount that you saw, that's gonna cover most of the sky and then maybe a little bit more for the bottom half down here. You don't want to put too much liquid on for the first layer. Not only will it get sticky real quick, especially if it's an old bottle. So if you struggle with layering and it gets sticky on you, another thing you can do is just oil out the part you're going to work on first. Do that part and then oil out the next part next to it and work on that. And you don't have to oil out the whole painting, especially if it's a large painting. I don't recommend oiling out the whole painting every time you go into work in an area. Let's squeeze out. So the plan for this painting is just to make it better. I realized I wasn't quite happy with it, actually. At first I was, and then I let it sit for a little while, and I was just like, I can do better. I'm probably going to repaint the entire thing today, mostly. Some of it will be glazes, so obviously the bottom is going to, the first layer is going to poke through, and you'll see it. So for glazing, I grabbed the same brushes I use for blending. Any brand will work, white nylon soft brushes. Let's just see what it would look like. We're going to experiment today. Let's see what it would look like with the Indian Yellow. Now, if you don't have these pigments, you need to get some transparent pigments like this. See how it's like stained glass? Look how vibrant it's going to be. And you don't want to, sometimes being too vibrant isn't necessarily a good thing. So when I apply glazes like this, A lot of times I'll come back in over the top with thicker opaque paint and I'll tone them back down. So it's a process. I'm going to add a little bit of orange into this for the water. This is an experiment today. This is how I learn how to paint, right? I learn how to paint by experimenting with the paint. Risking messing the entire thing up in the pursuit of knowledge. So I'm adding some red in now. I don't want to carry, you have to be careful when you're painting with transparent pigments. If I were to take yellow and glaze yellow over this purple, it would completely take that purple and gray it down because yellow is the complement of purple. So I'll show you what that would look like. It'll create a muddy color. And then I'll wipe it off. Almost a green. See that? Ugh. So you can't just glaze the whole painting the same color. But you can glaze a red lightly. I'm kind of scrubbing it right in. See how much a glaze is darken everything? That's why you generally want to wipe glazes back, but today we're experimenting. We're having fun. I'm taking some of the red now and the yellow, and I'm just defining these clouds here. All right, now I can't just do the whole painting this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some, well, first off, I'm going to get a clean brush. So every time with glazing, you don't want to wet your brush in odorless mineral spirits. Instead of cleaning your brush between glazes, you want to have a different brush for each color that you're glazing with. So if you're gonna, now that I'm gonna glaze some blue, I'm gonna glaze some of this. I need to get a clean brush. Otherwise, this is gonna be very thick. So see how I'm scrubbing the glaze in? Too much. So what I've done here is it's a little bit too much. And that's normal. With glazes, you need to wipe them back. So I will start right out from the center where I want the light brightest. And I'm going to lightly wipe the glaze back. And now over this, and I'm positive that the camera is not picking this up very well. It's gonna, so another tricky thing about trying to show you guys lessons about glazing, it confuses camera lens. It doesn't know how to see it, so the camera gets confused. Is it the light bouncing from the canvas back to the camera? The little sensor is seeing the color beneath the blue here, and it's kind of shimmering between that, and it settles on a color that's not accurate. So it's probably making this look super vibrant. And in person here, it's not that vibrant. So I will try my best to edit the footage on this so that it doesn't look too weird. But just know that if it does look a little, if the colors look a little weird, you'll have to take my word for it that it's the camera and not me messing up too much. So I'm not really going to glaze over these clouds too much because I'm probably just going to paint over these up here. But I am scumbling a little bit of the red and yellow and just basically everything on the palette. And I'm, whoop. Let's wipe it back a little more. All right, so now the whole painting is darker. I've put a sheen of glaze over it. And the downside with glazing is that it obviously darkens everything. So what we do now is we come back in with thick paint and we build up the light. And this is you could do this in layers where you glaze and then you paint back in with thicker paint and then you let that dry and then you maybe lightly sand it in some areas and then you come back in and glaze again and then layer again. And you can just continue layering and adding more thick paint, then glazing on top of the thick paint and then layering a little more thick paint and then glazing on top of that. And you can keep going like Turner did and building and building and building up the color and the texture. And the glazes will sit in the cracks of all the texture. So it's really a long process to create some of those Turner-esque techniques. I've tried to teach it before. There's a past lesson of a big seascape that I was commissioned to do, and it didn't turn out as great as I had hoped because it's a very difficult thing to teach in a larger painting. But here, we should be able to do pretty well. All right. So I'm not using a photo today to work from. I'm just doing this all from imagination now. Although you know what I'll do? I'm going to pull up a painting that I painted before for some inspiration. Alrighty. Grab some white here and yellow. It's going to be very bright. Yeah, too bright. Still too bright. That's how much I've darkened the painting, is that everything I put up is going to look bright, which is good. It's going to help build up the light easy. Pure cadmium yellow here. In the water. All right, now. So there's so much oil on the surface that I can lightly feather the edges, and the oil allows it to smooth and give me that smooth transition. So this is why the old masters painted into their glazes. They used the glazes to tint and basically oil out areas, and then they painted into the glazes. So there's been an issue with modern painters misunderstanding how glazes were used. And they use it incorrectly. It's not meant to really... Glazes are just a subtle little thing that you can do to shift colors. I went overboard. Like, this is too much glazing. You wouldn't see the old masters doing that much glazing, but I'm trying to demonstrate how to do it today, which is why. All right, so as I move my way out, I'm gonna just feather out that opaque paint. Some of this blue, you know what, let's redo the clouds up here actually. Grab a little bit larger of a brush. I'm just gonna mix right into this pool, a kind of purple. Add some blue. I could actually just take all this color and use it. And now I've got a kind of grayed down purple. Instead of wasting colors, see how I just merged all of those colors together. I need to add more yellow into this because it will look too purple. Yeah, that looks too purple. Even more yellow, a little bit too much. There's no guarantees this is going to look good by the end, all right? But it's meant to demonstrate how I'm applying the paint, how to paint into glazes. This probably is a little bit too dark now. Let's see what it looks like if I come in. Yeah, man. Everything is so dark from that glaze that it's difficult to judge the values. Yikes. Oh man, really struggling with this. Wipe it back. I picked up a little bit of that lighter paint on my brush and it just, that yellow, and it just really messed me up there. But it's okay. I used to get frustrated when I was painting, and if I made a mistake like that, I'd get upset because I didn't realize it was easy to fix. And oil paint is so forgiving. There's no point in getting upset. It's so easy to fix mistakes. So I'm taking this dark orange, almost, put a little blue in it. And now I can lighten it a little bit. Some bright red for right here. So my palette has quickly gotten a little out of control. So what I'm going to do is clean it off, but right now I'm just going to take the same brushes I was used for glazing, And I'm going to feather out the thicker paint and kind of scumble. This is called scumbling when you scrub like this. And I'm just going to smooth out all of this paint and blend it together so that the horizon line just kind of disappears. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend everything together with the paper towel roll, just with upward strokes. Grab some bright red here. Your finger is your best friend when you're scumbling. All right, and now I'm going to do another bit of some kind of greenish orange. Grab some Prussian into this orange down here and red. And I'm going to reshape the clouds here. Sorry, I was mixing. You guys weren't able to see what I was doing there. I'm just kind of mixing a lighter orange so that I can come down. I'm running out of spots on this palette. I need to clean it. So the gist of this is when you're layering like this, you're just using the more fluid nature of the second layer. All of that oil makes the paint more transparent, not just glazes. Even the opaque paint you put up is a little bit more transparent. So you're free to spread it and blend it over the dried paint a little bit more to create interesting effects. You can use your finger and you get interesting effects with the edges of the clouds. So like here, I can take the edge of the paper towel roll and drag that color down over the cloud there. Smooth out. See how it smoothed that edge of the cloud? Now, admittedly, a lot of this is not making the painting better. It's probably weakening it, but that's okay. Oh, throw my brushes around here. It's okay to weaken paintings. What I learned during this right now, I will probably use on the next large painting I do. Pushing everything to the extreme is how you learn. All right, so now I'm going to mix up a paint for the kind of, it's a little bit too green in here. So I'm going to mix up a dirty kind of greenish blue that's not as green. It might not even look green. Let's see what this looks like. or blue. Might look orange on the palette. See how that kind of looks orange, but when I put it up, it reads a little closer to blue. There's so much warm paint up here. Now I'm going to take an orange and blend it up into that gray kind of blue that I just put down. Create that smooth transition from the orange and yellow into that grayish blue. So now by this point, a lot of the glazes I put down are now gone. Or they're not gone, but they've been blended into the thicker paint. And that's okay. It's just a process. This is how glazing was done by Turner and the masters. It's just a layer that you paint into, and some of the glaze is going to poke through in areas. And the glaze influences the color choices that go above it. Whoops, it's too dark. Need to put some fresh paint out on the palette too here. So I'm just going to scumble some of this orange. Maybe make it a little pinker over here. Now I'm sure this lesson is very difficult to follow along, especially if you're a newer painter. I felt like the water before needed to have more blue in it. Or green or whatever. Let's blend all this together. So there's some debate in the oil painting community over whether putting thin layers of white over darker paint is scumbling. Some people think that, kind of like how you paint fog, where you take a white and you take white and you thin it down and you scrub it over something to lighten it. Somewhere along the line, people started thinking that that's actually called scumbling, but it's not. Scumbling is a brush technique. It's not actually. I think it comes from the fact that when you do that, you generally scrub the paint. So you are scumbling, but that is not scumbling in and of itself. Sorry, that's a little confusing for you guys to follow, I'm sure. the shadow of these clouds would be in the water here. So I'm just trying to be consistent. Now, a lot of the really saturated color that I put down earlier, it's gone now. So after this dries, I would go back in again and I would layer really rich glazes over this. The horizon's looking a little crooked too now. I'm going to try to straighten it. Clean off this palette again. Put some fresh paint out. So a lot of painters don't do this. They just, most painters, you try to get everything right in one layer. And then there are painters that do this approach where it's more experimental and they're layering just in search of maybe a happy accident sort of thing. By painting this way, you can't predict. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you'll end up with. And it's risky, but every now and then you're gonna knock one out of the park, so to speak. I can put some brighter red down here now. If you're not happy touching the paint, just use the palette knife like I've been teaching, like this. Make sure it's a clean edge and you can just, instead of your finger, you can use it. I want to just increase that glow of sunlight there. See, the glazing and the layering, it just allows you to build up the light more. If you tried to paint all this in just one go, wet and wet, like I did before, it's a little bit more difficult, not impossible, to get that strong light. But here, because I darkened everything with those glazes, I can really come in and just then on top of the glaze, build up the paint and the light. Plus it's fun playing with paint, right? That's why we do this. Don't just want to paint the same way every time, do you? You want to try new things. Maybe have a breakthrough. Figure something out that no one else has figured out before, although it's highly unlikely. People have been painting in oils forever, so it's, you're not going to invent anything new. But you may rediscover something that modern painters aren't really doing. An effect or a way of painting that was used by Goya or Rembrandt or who knows, and you figure it out for yourself, and then you will have a way to apply paint that allows your work to stand out above others. I'm going to blend that out a little bit. I don't want the glow to be that, just a straight line like that. I think I should brighten the water just in general here. So everything is starting to get a little sticky already. It's so hot in here that I'm running out of time, so to speak. Eventually it'll get, because of all the oil, it'll get sticky and a little bit too difficult to get the effects I want. Interesting though, isn't it? Painting this way. So now I'm going to blend out these clouds here a little bit. And then I can come back in and start adding lighter paint like this. Some of these clouds catching the light. All right, well, there was a little bit of technical difficulty there with the camera. It cut out on this part, but I'll go over what I did here. So I basically just took a little bit of a pink right over the top of the oiled out clouds that were here, and I softened the edges of all of the clouds into the wet paint, and then that's it. And so I was discussing, and unaware to me, the camera was not working. How, doing this, just kind of taking risks like this is what it's all about. As a painter, you're not going to grow if you just play it safe. And you'll hear people, hopefully I didn't say this earlier and I am repeating myself, but you'll meet people from time to time who have been painting for their whole lives, or not their whole lives, but 20, 30 years. And you look at the work they're doing now, and then you look at the work they were doing then, and it hasn't changed at all. And that's not good. You should be growing for the rest of your life. No matter how long you've been painting, there should be growth in your work. And I know what happens. People stop experimenting. They have their technique. Most of the time they paint in one layer and they just do the painting and that's it. And they never take risks. They never sand down the painting and try new things and push through. And it's through acquiring new knowledge and taking risks that we grow. So as long as you're doing that, you'll get better. If there's one thing I could impart to all of you, it's that. That's the most important thing. It's not playing it safe. It's taking risks. If you have an idea, instead of just thinking it, do it. Who cares if you mess the painting up? That's not the point. The value of taking that risk is greater than the value of any successful painting that you've done. And if you fail, it'll actually help your work in the future. All right, so that's enough of me ranting. So I'm just increasing the sense of that red light hitting. I love that. I love red clouds that are being lit by the sun. So right here is where the sun is, right? So everything along this line needs to be catching the bright light. You know what I could do now is I could grab the palette knife and some pure yellow, and I could brighten it up even further by putting a big, thick palette knife stroke right there, and then blend it out a little bit. So what I would do is I'd let this dry, and I'd probably come back in again and repeat this entire process. That's probably what I'll do. I won't film the other because it's pretty repetitive. But yeah, this is how I do a lot of my experimental sunsets, the ones that are really almost expressionist, not really expressionist, but you know what I mean. Not based on a real photograph or scene. They're just painted from imagination. I do them like this. So this looks a little crooked, this line here. I have a mirror behind me. And I'm trying to look. That might be a little straighter. And so this is so bright that when it dries, it may be too bright, right? Sometimes you don't want to take things to the extreme. And so I can glaze a little bit. I could come back into this painting and I could take, remember that yellow that I used at the start, the Indian yellow? I could take a little bit of that and glaze over this, and it'll really create a very vibrant, and it will darken it, but to glaze over something bright like that, really, it just pops. Look how bright that is, man. That's crazy. Looks like a real light. It's kind of crazy. When you paint an illusion like this, it looks bright, like I'm squinting my eyes at this in the studio. It looks so bright that it tricks my brain into thinking it's the sun, and that it can actually hurt my eyes by making me squint. It's too bright, but that's okay. Today was just about showing you guys how to do all this. I'm starting to really repeat myself too much now. So we're going to call this lesson done. All right, you guys, I hope you had as much fun as I did. Thank you for watching.